Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today we'll be covering Valen and Catherine Sakai. We'll also be dipping into a little non-canon lore, give a little more background between the two. And here we go. Valen, a Minbari not of Minbari, was the most significant figure in Minbari history, appearing mysteriously in the midst of the First Shadow War, aboard a powerful new battle station. He is credited with uniting the fractured Minbari Castes and leading them to victory against the Shadows. He is also known as the founder and the first leader of both the Grey Council and the Anla'Shok. Moreover, Valen's action laid the groundwork for the founding of the Interstellar Alliance a millennium later. When Babylon 4 arrived in 1260 AD, Geoffrey Sinclair destroyed the letter he wrote to himself in 1360 AD to prevent the slim possibility of future information falling into the hands of the Shadows or their allies. He sent a message to the Vorlon Empire, to the two Vorlons he knew well enough in the future, Kosh and Ulcrest. They alone came to the station first, proving who he was and when he was from without giving too much of the future away. He enlists their help. Using the Triluminary and the Chrysalis device, he then transforms himself into Valen, taking on the appearance of a Minbari. After his transformation, Valen contacts the Minbari. Ever since the death of their leaders and the destruction of their greatest starbase, the Minbari fleet had been on the run. Their ships were damaged, scattered, and cut off. They were unable to find a safe port as all other races had been turned against them, and they could not return to Minbar for fear of leading the Shadows back to their homeworld. Receiving a signal, they follow it back to the source, Babylon 4. A boarding party is sent and they are met by Zathras, who takes them to Sinclair, flanked by the two Vorlons. He introduces himself as Valen and says that they have much work ahead of them. Seeing Valen and his station as an answer to their prayers, the Minbaris quickly rally around and adopt the station as their new home base. The Minbari were curious where Valen had come from, but were unable to trace his lineage in any Minbari line, and did not press the issue with him. Hence, he would often be said to be a Minbari not born of Minbari. Valen attempts to unite the Minbari classes, but they begin to quarrel amongst themselves again, refusing to bend. Valen turns his back on them and creates the Anla'Shok, a new army that recognizes no caste lines and operates outside the uncooperative castes, and they in turn call him Intlazah. Valen constructs their base and training compound in the foothills of the northern mountain range of a wide plateau that overlooks the city of Tuzanor. It was said that Valen wanted the Rangers to train for battle, where they would also be able to see the sacred city, over the objections of some elements in the warrior caste, who protest that good soldiers couldn't be created in a place of peace. Shamed by Valen's decisive actions, the Minbari elders allow him to reorganize them. He calls forth the Nine, the first Grey Council consisting of 3 of each caste, warrior, worker, and religious, remaining outside the caste. He became the first chosen one and leader of the council. Seeking allies, Valen called many races to his cause, gathering them on Minbar, where just outside the city of Tuzanor, at the peak of Mount Halea, and accompanied by Kosh and Ulcrest, he gave what would be known as his holy times to come speech. He prophesied the defeat of the Shadows and that they would return in 1,000 years, that the Anla'Shok will rise and be instrumental in that coming war against their ancient enemy, in which the Minbari would unite with the other half of their soul. Slowly, the tide of battle turns in their favor, and they eventually drive the Shadows out of all their places and into hiding beneath Zahadum, where they enter a form of hibernation. After the war, Valen recognizes the danger in allowing the Anla'Shok to remain as such an effective fighting force without an enemy to fight, where the wrong person as their leader could turn a restless and dissatisfied group into an army for conquest and power, rather than disband the Rangers, as he believed that without the unifying symbol of the Anla'Shok, the Minbari military might once again become a collection of warring clan factions, and because he knew the Shadows would return again someday, he retasked the Anla'Shok with a new mission. They were to be a fighting force no more, Instead, they were to become sentries and watchers, collecting information quietly on Minbar from returning travelers and friendly sources on other worlds, keeping alive the traditions of the Anla'Shok, while they kept watch for any sign that the shadows had returned. And we'll be right back after this. In his absence, their leader would be known by one of the same titles Valen himself carried, Anla'Shok Na, or Ranger 1, but would not be Intilza. Valen eventually finds Catherine Sakai. His marriage to her caused a scandal as she was an alien, so they and their children had to leave Minbar to escape prosecution. Before going to the sea and leaving Minbar for the last time, Valen left behind a series of sealed boxes containing, among other things, letters addressed to himself, Delenn, and Marcus Cole, with orders that they be locked away in the Council's archives until a specific date, over 900 years hence. He also entrusted the Council with the 3 Triluminaries and the crystal device that he had received from Epsilon 3, which are kept as Minbari's most holy relics. Babylon 4 is taken to a secret place of rest to become a monument. Its crew never returned, and its fate would remain a mystery for over 900 years. Before it leaves, though, Valen leaves a final message in the hopes that one day Ivanova, Garibaldi, or Delenn might find it, and know that he had finally found her. His children later returned to Minbar in secret, with help from the Grey Council, and introduced human DNA into the Minbari gene pool. A chronicle of their bloodline and progeny was kept by those members of the Grey Council over the centuries in a sealed record to maintain the myth of their racial purity. After living well over 100 years, Valen's death would remain shrouded in mystery. His body never found, and the Minbari always speak of him as having traveled beyond rather than dying, with some believing that he will return to them someday. Back on Minbar, Tunzalur, where Valen made his home, continues as Valen's favorite place on all of Minbar, and support for the Anla'Shok among the people of Tunzanor was stronger than anywhere else on the planet. His descendants eventually returned to Minbar and have families of their own, carrying with them the human DNA of Valen and passing it on to the Minbari genome. After 1,000 years and many generations, the number of Valen's descendants could not be counted. Delenn of Mir would one day be among them. Over the following centuries, many records from Valen's time are lost, and not even an image of the great leader survives. As a result, all depictions of him are given deliberate, ambiguous features. His prophecies and letters guided Delenn and indirectly helped Sheridan during the Second Shadow War. His actions provided the foundation for winning the war, and later building the Interstellar Alliance. He is therefore also credited for being one of the founders of the Interstellar Alliance. Coming up after this, Catherine Sakai. Catherine Sakai was a captain and owner of the Earth survey vessel Skydancer, with which she contracted her services as an independent planetary surveyor to various mining corporations. She grew up on Earth in Alaska, but moved to Hong Kong with her mother when her parents divorced. When her mother passed away, she moved back to Alaska to live with her father again for a short while, though she remained in contact with her aunt in Hong Kong. She had always been fascinated by the stars and was always passionate about traveling in space. However, she grew to dislike hyperspace travel, and like many long-range space pilots, Sakai occasionally suffered from HST syndrome. In 2243, Catherine Sakai joined Earth Force, and while in her second year as a cadet at Earth Force Academy, she met Jeffrey Sinclair, who was her flight instructor. During her first flight instruction with Sinclair, she almost blacked out after he performed a hairpin backwards loop followed by a spinning barrel roll. She would later admit to herself that it was love at first sight. This was the beginning of a 15-year on-again, off-again relationship where the two would often argue and go their separate ways for years at a time, only to get back together and begin a new cycle. Shortly before the outbreak of the Earth-Minbari War, Catherine took Jeff to meet her aunt in Hong Kong. During the trip, they had a picture taken of the two of them that Catherine would carry with her for years to come, keeping it in a black lacquered wooden frame decorated with tiny gold stars. After the war ended in 2248, Catherine finished her hitch in Earth Force and started a new career as a professional planetary surveyor and independent contractor. In March 2258, shortly before visiting Babylon 5, Sakai surveyed a likely candidate for mining, a Class 2 planetoid with minimal atmosphere in grid epsilon coordinates 471-18-25. It contained high levels of platinum, duranium, as well as many other valuable minerals. Once on Babylon 5, she met with her business contractors to give her report on her last surveys and discuss her next commission. Before boarding, Catherine was unaware that Jeffrey Sinclair was the station's commander. Had she known, she said she wouldn't have come, having promised to stay away from Jeff after their last encounter. The two shared dinner at B5's Fresh Air restaurant, and while there was still considerable attraction between the two, they agreed that things simply wouldn't work out between them. Later that day, Sakai's business meeting ended up providing a significant windfall after it turned out that one of the planets she had previously surveyed for that company turned up a large quantity of quantum 40. Feeling a need to celebrate her lucky break, she dropped in on Sinclair, and after a brief exchange, and despite their earlier conversation, the two decided to once more rekindle their friendship, this time hopefully for good. Sakai left the station shortly after, for a survey run in the Dinab sector, though she promised to be back soon. Later that month, Sakai negotiated a contract with Universal Terraform Corporation to survey Sigma 957. As that planet is contested space, it was necessary to clear her expedition with the Narn regime, though she is warned by Ambassador Jakar that Sigma 957 is a dangerous world to visit. Believing that he is motivated by a desire to keep the planet for the Narn exclusively, she goes over his head and proceeds with her survey mission. Shortly after Sakai arrives at Sigma 957, on board the Skydancer, and begins her survey, she encounters an unknown object, later found out to be one of the first ones. The object quickly drains Skydancer's power levels, leaving the ship disabled, long-range communications down, and with less than 2 hours before it'll crash into the planet's surface. Luckily, two Narn Frazee-class heavy fighters, having been previously dispatched by Ambassador Jakar, arrive in time to assist her and tow the Skydancer back to Babylon 5. In December of that year, shortly before the assassination of President Santiago, Sinclair proposed to Catherine, who said yes. Though she fully intended to get married, she first had a business commitment to honor for Universal Terraform. So, on January 1st, 2259, Catherine set out on a survey mission out to the rim of unknown space, in the Skydancer, not expecting to be back for another 5 months. Months later, she was over the planet UTC-51-03b, codenamed Glacier, had turned up a significant amount of quantum 40, an excellent prospect for mining. Before leaving, Catherine was delighted when she received a message from Sinclair, among her standard set of mission updates and jump gate sequence codes, this being the first she had heard from him since leaving Babylon 5 in January. The message read, "Catherine, remember Sigma 957? Your current situation is different but similar. Be careful. All my love, Jeff." Puzzled by such a cryptic message, she wondered if it was some kind of a joke, but she reasoned that it must be some kind of a warning, and cryptic nature meant that whomever she was being warned about could be listening in on her communications. Sakai reasoned that Jeff was somehow warning her that there was something very powerful and dangerous out on the rim. Not taking any chances, she altered her automated jump gate and orbital procedure program, so if anyone had intercepted her instructions from the company and came looking for her, the Skydancer would be somewhere else, not on the company's specified flight plan. And we'll be right back after this. Her final 2 stops were at planet UTC-59-02b, codenamed Skinner, which turned up nothing of value, and UTC-67-02c, codenamed Molyneux, which proved to be quite fruitful, though mercifully uneventful. So, with her itinerary complete and a sample bay full of promising minerals, Sakai set course to rendezvous with the Universal Terraform Ops ship to drop off her samples and data, and get back to civilization. Still wary of any surprises, Sakai turned her early warning systems to warn of any approaching object, knowing that the given nature of hyperspace and its tendencies to distort, that she would have to endure an endless stream of false alarms as her sensors read temporary hyperspace eddies and knots. Her caution paid off when, a day into her journey, she was awoken from her bunk webbing by a proximity alarm. which had detected a formation of at least a dozen unknown vessels, which the Skydancer had flown right into the middle of, as well as an unusual form of jump point remnant. Keeping in mind Jeff's warning, Catherine opted not to contact the spider-like alien ships and stay on course, in the middle of their formation, in hopes that the Skydancer was too small for them to notice in the chaos of hyperspace. After a short while, the ships began to peel off one by one, apparently leaving her free to get the ship back on course for the beacon and the rendezvous with the op ship. However, not trusting her good luck, Sakai had the computer perform another full scan, and sure enough, at maximum detection range, there was one of the ships following directly behind her. For the next 3 days, the alien ship kept pace with the Skydancer. As she finally approached Quadrant 130, the location of the jump gate where the UTC ops ship should be waiting for her, Sakai, convinced that the alien ship would attack as soon as she arrived at her destination, prepared her plan of escape. Activating the jump gate sequence, Catherine suddenly increased the Skydancer's speed to maximum as the alien ship began moving on an intercept vector. Just at the right moment, while still inside the gate, she opened her sample bays and dumped the entire contents, including a sizable load of the highly valuable and highly unstable Quantium-40, into the open vortex. As the Skydancer crossed the transition point, several tons of radioactive material trailing behind it fouled the jump gate's transition boosters, overloaded the energy exchange, and shut the gate down behind her with a massive crackling of energy discharge that nearly tore the Skydancer apart and left the ship limping into normal space. Though she didn't realize it till later, but at that same moment, the enemy ship had fired, but the local hyperspace currents had deflected the worst of it, while the ignited debris had propelled the ship forward and out of harm's way. A quick scan confirmed that the alien vessel didn't make it into normal space and that the jump gate was offline. The Skydancer was intact but heavily damaged and operating on emergency power. Sakai took the ship into dock with the massive Universal Terraform Operations ship that was stationed nearby. After filing her report with UT, Sakai returned to Babylon 5, having severed her ties with the corporation over the suggestion her relationship with Sinclair wasn't good for the company's image. When she arrived, she was shocked to find that Sinclair was no longer in command and was unable to track down any of the command staff, all of whom, it would turn out, were occupied searching for Captain Sheridan, who had recently been abducted by a Streb vessel. Eventually, she manages to find Michael Garibaldi, who provides her with travel documents left for her by Valen, so she can come to Minbar and reunite with Sinclair. After arriving on Minbar, Sakai stores the Skydancer in a Yador spaceport hangar reserved by Valen and makes her way to Tunzanor, where she is finally reunited with Sinclair. After helping Sinclair to complete the ritual to become the new Intelza of the Anla'Shok, a process which involves consuming Shah-Net-Yat, Sakai decides to become a ranger herself and began the 3-month-long Anla'Shok training program alongside her new fellow recruit, Marcus Cole. In November 2259, having completed her training as an Anla'Shok, Ranger Sakai volunteered for a mission to destroy a shadow device in Sector 14. During the mission, Sakai, along with her prototype hybrid fighter, disappeared into the temporal rift. With no way of knowing where or when in time she could have emerged, Sinclair asks Kosh if there is any hope at all of finding Catherine again. The Vorlon responds by leaving the room, but just before the door closes, says, "Perhaps." Though the details are unclear, this possibility of hope did eventually come to fruition, as a message from Valen, found on the wreck of Babylon 4 in 2261, reveals, "From Valen. And as for me, I've received my own reward, because I found her. At long last, I found her." Hey, thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. Special thanks to the Babylon Project for all information you heard today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.